listening to the Savvy Musician Show with Leah McHenry, and this is your secret weapon for success in the new music industry. Hey guys, welcome back. We are talking to Michael Elsner. This is part 2 of an amazing conversation we're having about licensing, how to get your music into TV, films, and different mediums, and the huge income potential there is around this, and why it gets such a bad rap, why there's so much skepticism around it, and why I've never pursued it. Michael, when we first talked, I told you, hey, Michael, these are all the reasons why I've never done licensing. I'm majorly skeptical of it. I want to be in control of my music. I've never heard of anybody being successful at it. Change my mind. Like I hold it sign. Licensing is terrible. Change my mind. Yeah. And you did. You really did change my mind. And I am totally, in fact, when I set my goals for 2019, I said, this year I will make X amount of money in licensing. It's just a goal. I don't know if I'll hit it. Maybe I'll do better than that, but it's just the point is that I made up my mind to do it, and that I decided I'm going to learn everything I can about it, and then I'm going to do it. And so here I am. You changed my mind. And I want to tell everybody a little bit about your 4-step process. If they want to hear your background and who you are, they'll go back to the episode previous and they can listen to that whole background. But let's talk about the nitty-gritty of your process, because it really simplified things for me, and I feel like I can actually understand it.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny because I've been showing my friends how to license their music for years. I mean, probably, over a decade. And through the process, I didn't know what I was doing when I started. I was really just out in the wilderness, kind of, figuring it out. And, but then I honed in on a process that worked. And so I just realized as I was showing this to a lot of my friends that it's just 4 simple steps, and I'll tell you what they are, and then we can break them down. The first step I call build your catalog. We'll dive into exactly what that means in a minute. The second step I call create valuable content. Value is the key word in this particular step. The third step I call mastering metadata. And then the fourth step is just simply get your music heard. Now, if we dive into them, the first step, build your catalog, it sounds like common sense, right? You have to have music, of course, to start licensing your songs. But for me, my approach has always been, like I said in our last discussion, I grew up just playing in bands, and that's my history. So I never really pursued being a songwriter and writing for publishing companies and trying to write for so and so artists to get my song on their record. That was never my world. My approach was always just writing my own music and playing in bands and having a good time. And what I realized is that when you write music that is honestly you, genuinely you, as an artist, we can write across many multiple different genres, and it can still be genuinely us. When we do that, that passion comes across when it's synced to film. If you write music that you're passionate about and you then sync it to picture, that's going to be even more emotional. It's going to make even more of an emotional impact in the scene. And that's really all you're doing with your songs, is you're helping the storyteller tell their story, So I call it build your catalog because my philosophy behind it is just write the music that you're passionate about. Get rid of all the rules and the barriers and the myths that you've, put into your head over the years, or that publishers have told you, well, if you want so-and-so to write your, record your song, you got to write it like this. Ignore that. It's garbage. You can still go down that path, of course, if you want to, but I would ignore it. Write the music that you're just passionate about. Build your catalog. And I feel that, write music often. If you want to go into your studio and if you want to write a rock track one day and you're a singer-songwriter, then write a rock track and have a great time doing it and explore that creativity that you have with that. If you're a rock musician and you want to go in your studio and write an a cappella piece, do it. Absolutely. There will be an outlet for it. Believe me. So step one is just to build your catalog. The idea of it is just to create freely and without any kind of reservation and just enjoy the process. When you do that, that's going to come across in your music, and you're just going to enjoy you're going to love doing what you do, right? So step one, build your catalog. Now, step two, I call create valuable content. You have to keep in mind that with licensing your music, your end users are different than if you're releasing your record to the masses, right? If you're an artist playing shows and you're releasing your music to the masses and you're selling your CDs, they're going to consume that CD in a different way. They're going to put it in the CD player in their car, and they're going to listen to it while they're driving down the street or they're stuck in traffic. If they're sitting at home, hanging out and vacuuming or something like that. That's how they're going to consume that music. So what you're delivering to them is you're delivering, 10 master recordings that are all on a CD. Or of course, if you're streaming it online, the same thing. But in the TV world, your end users are not going to be listening to your music while they're driving down the street. They're going to be the editors who are looking for the right song to fit a particular scene. They're going to be the music supervisors who are looking to replace, say, a Taylor Swift song that might cost $80,000 to license with your song, which is maybe in the Taylor Swift style, that they could license for $4,000, right? So they're looking for the right song for the right scene. Now, when you create valuable content, my process is really simple. When you're mixing your music, or if you're an artist and you're working with a mix engineer, we've all experienced this. We're sitting in the back, listening to the mix. The engineer's, maybe soloing up just the drums and the bass, and he's doing the EQ and, kind of diving into those sounds to really make it sound good. But you ever sit there and just listen to that for a little bit and you think, man, this sounds really good. I didn't even know that the bass player and the drummer were doing that. This is a really cool groove, That could be an alternate mix. That could be the drum and bass mix, right? If the engineer is doing stuff and he's muting all the electric guitars and he's just listening to the acoustic guitar and the vocal, you might sit there and think, oh my gosh, this sounds great, just the acoustic guitar and the vocal. I should maybe go back and record an acoustic vocal of this. Well, there you go. Solo up the vocal, solo up the acoustic guitar, take all the other instruments out. There's your acoustic mix. You can do a lot of different alternate mixes. And what you're doing is you're delivering to your end user, and we'll just, for this example, we'll say it's a music editor who's decided to use your song. But let's say that particular scene has a section where there's dialogue, maybe there's footsteps, maybe there's some wind outside, there's a lot of other sound design. If you're doing a big rock track, that's going to get in the way of that. So what he can do is he can pull in that stripped down mix. Maybe it's just vocals, drums, bass, and maybe like, a clean electric guitar or something like that for the verse. He can use that mix, and then right when the dialogue ends, he can cut into the full mix where suddenly that's where all the electric guitars and the keyboards and the background vocals and this, big thick sound comes in. You're giving the editor options to use your song in multiple ways through that scene. Okay.
Oh my gosh. And I keep thinking it's no big deal if you go to write music now to just start making those mixes now. Because now I'm looking at my old, albums going, I don't have any of those stems. Yeah. I don't have any of that stuff. And if I had only known to create all of those options, that would have given me like 300 more songs. It would have given you, I call them licensable pieces of audio. Because of, it's still the same song. When the editor goes into, let's say you're working with Music Library, and we'll call it Music Library A, that Music Library hosts their music online, and most reputable libraries use a platform called Source Audio. And if you start investigating different libraries, you'll start seeing it over and over and over. And what Source Audio does, it allows, it's kind of like if someone has say a SoundCloud link or Reverb Nation link, it's, the same thing. You can, you have a little player with all the songs, but with Source Audio, you can click this little button, which opens up all these little pull down, this little menu
that shows all the other alternate versions of that song. So an editor can very quickly look at that song and say, oh my gosh, this person's delivering 13 alternate mixes. He can quickly hit that button. It'll give him a pull down menu. He can say, oh my gosh, the stripped down version, an acoustic version, a bass and drums mix. This is all the stems. This is perfect. You know, he can easily then pull in all of the files that he would need to get that song sitting exactly as it needs to be under that scene. So the valuable content, this is something that very few people do, right? If you want to make yourself stand out to be like that top 1% of people licensing your songs, deliver valuable content. That's why I call it delivering or creating valuable content. This is value for your end user, your music supervisor, your music editor. This is what allows you to get all those other placements, you know? So that's
brilliant, by the way. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing such in-depth info so already.
That was a lot of, that was many years of trial and error. And like, you know, like I'd get a commercial and I'd be out having sushi somewhere and I'd get a call saying like, hey, we love this, but by noon, you know, can you send us a mix that sounds like this? And then I'd have to just quickly get up and deal with traffic in LA back to my place and then, you know, find the session. It might be 6 months old and grab it from a different hard drive and, you know, and then rush and I'm on the timer. I got 10 more minutes. I got to get it in so I can get this commercial, you know, and finally I just realized I'm just going to deliver all this stuff. Now you're not overwhelming them either. You know, you're not delivering. There's a difference here between tracks and stems. And this is very important. A stem, you should never have more than 5 stems of a song. And a stem is simply a mix of an instrument group. Okay, a track is the individual track. You could have, you know, when you deliver your song to your mix engineer, your song could have like, you know, 55 tracks, all your vocals, all your drums, all your individual guitars and all that stuff. You're not delivering that to your
good thing. One of my songs literally had 120 tracks in it. Easy.
That's not uncommon. Yeah, it's not uncommon at all, especially now where you can, you know, just layer so many things, you know. You're not delivering those files to the editor to remix, not at all. What you're going to do is you're going to burn instrument groups. So for example, you would have like a stem would be a drum and percussion stem, right? So if you have big rock drums and say you have some big taiko drums and tambourine and shaker and all that kind of stuff, that would be a stereo mix of just those instruments as they sound in your you know, master recording. Basically mute everything that's not those drums and burn it down to a stereo mix. Same thing with all the guitars, all the vocals, all the background vocals, all the keyboards. And then what happens is when you line up those, you know, 5 stereo stem tracks, if you bring them into a different, you know, recording system and you line them up and you hit play, it should sound exactly as your master sounds. Should sound no different. Okay. If you're doing stems and they don't sound like your master recording, then you're doing stems wrong. Okay. And there's plenty of information online that will show you how to burn stem mixes. Very important to remember, stem mixes are not individual tracks. There's a big difference. So, you know, you can easily over deliver here as well, you know. So it's important to deliver what I call valuable content. Always put yourself in the position of your end user. Imagine yourself being a music editor working on a particular show. If you wanted to use your song, look at every track that you're burning. Is that something that you would probably use? Just because you can burn it doesn't mean you should, right? If you're doing a heavy metal track, doesn't mean you need to burn a holiday mix of it, right? It doesn't need something else. Yeah. You know, so just because you can doesn't mean you should. You can easily shoot yourself in the foot by over delivering. But you know, if you're just delivering a vocal and an instrumental, that's the very bare necessity of what's necessary for this. But generally, to really create a long-term career out of this, you're going to want to dive into your mixes a little bit more. And moving forward, when you're sitting in the studio and you're listening to a mix engineer put your song together and you're hearing cool little elements and you think that could be its own really cool thing, then burn it out. Make it its own really cool thing. It doesn't have to be the version that appears on your CD. That could be an alternate mix. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. That's it, to me, it's just like, let's kill a few birds with one stone while we're here doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And in my mind, I would think too, like, hey, does this sound cool by itself? then that sounds like a mix to me.
Yeah.
You know, like.
So if we let's time out for a second. Let's go back to the beginning. I would actually say the very first thing that I recommend to anyone who wants to get into licensing their songs is to take a week or two and just stop watching TV and start listening to TV. You know, in the evening when you normally sit there and watch some show or whatever, lay there on the sofa, close your eyes, just click it to some random show. It doesn't have to be a show that you watch. In fact, go to some shows you've never even seen before. Turn it on and lay there for an hour. And when the commercials come on, don't get up. Lay there through the commercials, because your goal here in this process is to just sit and listen. Listen beyond the dialogue and the storyline and the sound effects and all that stuff. Listen to just the music and get a good grasp of what you're hearing on TV. And you'll find that you hear a lot of just bass and drum mixes. I've made a lot of money just soloing up bass and drums on the tracks that I write and sending those in as the bass and drum mix. Those get used all the time. In the music industry, we would have absolutely no use for them. In the TV industry, it's opportunities for that stuff. So,
Man, that's good. Really good. So we've talked about creating catalog of awesome stuff, creating valuable content, which is lots of different mixes, and also having stems available. Yeah. Do you put those stems, those are all part of the whole library or the thing you send over? You just have them available in case they need them, kind of a thing?
Generally, I work with 3 libraries right now. Three, you asked me earlier if people could, work with multiple libraries, and we'll get into this. I have my music catalog spread out over 3 different companies. And with all of them, I send in all of those elements, because they all work. They all use Source Audio as their main platform. And the nice thing about it is when I make that delivery, it sits basically in the, like, I guess you would call them like virtual tracks or something like that behind the main track on that platform. That way an editor at any time, if it's, 12:30 at night, he needs that particular song, he can go in there and grab that stuff immediately. I don't have to get a phone call and wake up and then have to go send stuff in. I take care of that all ahead of time so that, I can just keep moving on with my life.
Yeah, that makes great sense.
Yeah.
And then you've got step 3.
Step 3. So mastering, I call it mastering metadata. This is by far the most important part of the process.
And the most unsexy.
It is the most boring part of the process as well, but it doesn't take long. Okay. And I've even created my own process for this. The last thing I want to do is open up an Excel spreadsheet and type stuff in. That's why I got into playing guitar, right? And the last thing I want to do is sit in front of a computer and do that. But I've even created a process for this that makes it really quick for me to fly through this stuff. But it's important. And you have to understand what metadata is. And metadata is simply the information that's attached to the audio file. It's the descriptive terms that describe what that audio file is. So for example, most people have iTunes. I think we can assume that most people have iTunes on their computer, whether they're using a Mac or a PC. If they're using a PC, maybe they have that Windows Media Player or whatever. But most of us have a program on our computer where we have our music catalog, right? And so metadata in its most basic form would be the information that would allow us to search for a specific song very quickly. So let's say I have, 1,000 songs in my music catalog. If I wanted to find Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, instead of scrolling down to the P's and then scrolling down to Pink Floyd and then scrolling over to the album, which would be The Wall, and then scrolling over to disc 1, I could just go into the search bar and type in Comfortably. When you type in Comfortably, every song in your catalog that has Comfortably in the title or as a descriptive term will show up. That's metadata in its most basic form, right? It allows us to type in one word and all the songs that fit that word pop up. But when it comes to licensing, the metadata that I'm talking about are the descriptive keywords. These are adjectives that you're going to use to describe your song, okay? If you have a song called Blue Sky, let's just say, let's go with that example for a moment. If you have a song called Blue Sky, if someone is looking for that particular song, let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say that the scene is a bunch of people on a beach having a really good time playing volleyball in the sand and, surfing and stuff like that. Yeah, Blue Sky, that could definitely, work for that, But let's say that the music editor, the music supervisor, whoever's going to be searching for the song, they're going to type in words like sand, beach, volleyball, surfing, ocean. I'm trying to think of other words, energetic, rockin', just maybe even specific instruments could even say like things like, ukulele, female, singer, songwriter, maybe even a particular artist that they're looking for, because they're really they want to find that very specific song. Notice they didn't type in Blue Sky, right? So if you had nothing else on that song other than the title Blue Sky, even though that's the perfect song for the scene, it would never show up at the bottom of that search, right? It's like a funnel. There's hundreds of thousands of songs up here, and they're typing in those keywords to get to the bottom, 5 or 6 key songs that they can audition and choose for that particular scene. So what you're going to want to do is you want to use descriptive keywords, metadata, to describe your song. And you're going to input this actually into the audio file. And that's where you're going to use words like, summer, fun, beach, ocean, surfing, ukulele. Maybe the song is in the style of a particular artist. So whatever this, artist is, an instrument or two, ukulele, glockenspiel, happy, upbeat, fun, rockin'. Okay, we can just keep going on and on. You can get 60 or 70 keywords in there easily. That's the metadata. And that's what's so important. It's essential, because if you don't have that in there, then your song will never show up in a search. The only way that song would ever show up in a search is if someone's typing in the specific title of that song, right? So metadata is key.
Like, no wonder some people don't have success.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder. This makes so much sense. Now I'm going, well, that's I'm having like a light bulb moment. I'm going, well, duh. Like, and many of us didn't even know you could do that.
So let me tell you a story. I moved back to Nashville a couple of years ago, and I spoke at a music conference. And after I did that, I kind of spoke on licensing, and very quickly word got out that there was this new guy in town who was denied by all those publishers years ago, but who knew the licensing thing. And so a bunch of publishers were, having a lot of meetings with me, and they were all trying to figure out the licensing stuff. So I met with this one publisher, huge company, big offices down on Music Row and the whole shebang, big artists and whatnot. And I met with the president and the vice president a number of times. And I kept taking them through the metadata stuff. And they had a new artist who just come out, who's very popular right now. And she had just come out, and she had this song. It's just exactly what I was describing. Happy, fun summer song. It started with ukulele. Then, I got to be this really cool track, and it was the first song on her record at the time. And he had gone to LA for like 2 weeks and just met with music supervisor after music supervisor, and was delivering some of their music to them. And he came back, and about a month later, he called and wanted to, meet up. So I went down to their office, and we had some lunch, and went back there. And he said, "Michael, I've met with all these people. I'm still not getting any licenses." Okay, so we called up his iTunes, and he's talking about this particular artist and how she's going to be the next big thing, and she has been. And I typed in, I listened to one of the songs, and it was that song. It was the first song on a record. It had ukulele. It was awesome, and so I got that image. This is like a total beach song. So I started typing in ukulele, beach, all that stuff. I already looked and I saw what his metadata was. So I knew he didn't have any metadata other than the song title, the artist, and then he had for licensing contact. So I started typing in these words, and nothing came up. And I said, you'd agree that, this song should be on a scene with, people on the beach and driving down the PCH, and oh, this is perfect for that. Yeah. How come it's not showing up when I type in all those words? And it's simply because there's a big difference. Even though I'd met with him a number of times and had taken him through it, he still just didn't put it into action. There's a big difference between the way that your end users work in the music industry and the way that your end users work in the TV industry. And if you're going down the licensing route, you're in the TV industry, and you have to cater to the way that they work. So even though this guy, awesome dude, he's become a good friend, and he's learned a lot. Even though, they spent a lot of money and he was, meeting with all these people and getting all their music out to all these people, it didn't matter, because what he was delivering to them was of zero value and zero relevance. They'd be nice and they'd, put the USB stick in their computer and upload songs into their, however they were using it, if they were using iTunes or SoundMiner or whatever they were using for their catalog on their computer. But it didn't matter, because unless they were looking for that particular artist or that particular song, it would never show up. So metadata is essential. If you don't do your metadata, everything else that you do before and after steps 1 and 2, and then step 4 is absolutely useless. And this is a great example of a guy with a major company who did that, spent a lot of money on step 4, going out and meeting with the right people. And then they spent a lot of money on steps 1 and 2, which making her record and all that stuff. But because his metadata was absolute garbage, it translated to zero success. Now she ended up having a lot of success on radio, and she's, become a successful artist, but this is before she broke. So all that effort was at that point really in vain. So as an independent artist, when you don't have all that money behind you to fix all those mistakes, metadata is essential. And it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to put good metadata on your song. And the process that I use is when I'm done with a song, I just hit play. And I have a sheet that's about 7 pages long. I've been building it over the years. It's 4 columns. And it's basically as every popular adjective that I've realized over the years that gets used in a lot of these searches. And what I do is I just read it down. I let the song play, and the second that one of those words resonates with me, I just type it in. And I just keep going. And I usually have to listen to the song, maybe like 3 or 4 times for me to get through all those words. And then, of course, I think of a couple artists that the music's in the style of, and I add, 3 or 4 different artists. That's it. Very simple.
Wow. That is really good. Okay, so let's say you've got your metadata, it's on your songs, you've got this catalog of stuff. Step 4, getting it heard.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. It's getting it heard, which again is a process. And it starts by finding the proper end users for your music. Now, this is going to start, every artist has to decide, every musician has to decide what path they're most comfortable going down, all right? Like we said earlier in our previous conversation, there are 4 paths to getting your music heard. It's direct to music supervisors and music editors. Don't forget music editors. They are essential, all right? The popular word right now is music supervisors, and they're very important. Music editors are essential, all right? So don't forget them when you're doing this research. So your first step is direct to music supervisors and music editors. That's my opinion. Editors are awesome. The second path is exclusive music libraries. I'm a huge fan of them. The third and the fourth paths are non-exclusive libraries and royalty-free music libraries. I am not a fan of them at all. So we're just going to ignore them. But if as an artist you want to walk down that road, you're afraid to give up rights to your music or whatever, those paths are fine. You have to realize though that you will not make the same amount of income as you will following the first 2 paths. I also want to say, if the idea, or if you have a fear as a musician, and I totally understand it, if you have a fear as a musician of giving up any rights to your music or publishing or anything like that, I really want to encourage you to buy a book or 2 on music publishing and fully understand what's involved with it. Because there's a lot of myths out there about publishing that people have that are just inaccurate. Okay, so that's the first step. Figure out which path is ideal for you. The step one, I'm going to ignore the third and fourth ones, okay? So we're just going to talk about direct-to-music supervisors and music libraries. Direct-to-music supervisors and music editors is going to be the most intense on you because all of the administration comes down to you. Think of that as the equivalent of having your own house, but then selling it for sale by owner, right? If you're selling your house on your own, then you have to do all the stuff that I have no idea what's involved, but it's probably a lot to actually get your house on the market and sell it and find people and this and that. There's a lot involved. The second path is to work with a music library. That'd be the same as having a realtor come in, let them deal with it. They bring in the photographers and all the people who have to do all the stuff. And then, you negotiate a deal later on once they find the person to buy your house. That's simplifying it, but that's basically the difference, okay? When you are working with a library, you have to give up a portion of your publishing. That's the incentive. That's how they get paid. That's their incentive to work your catalog. If you have a fear of that, again, I really want to encourage you to read some books on publishing and understand terms in contracts and reversion clause. Because let me give you an example. I administered my catalog for a long time. And then it just got to the point where it's too big and I couldn't handle it anymore. I was spending so much time dealing with the stuff, the business aspect of it all the time, that I was losing the creative time and I just wasn't happy anymore. But what I realized really quickly was when I handed my stuff over to a music library, my placements increased exponentially. So let me give you some simple math and we'll go by this. Let's say that you want to retain all the rights to your music and you want to do it on your own, and that's awesome. So you have to go out and you have to go, make the inroads. You got to research the TV shows. You got to find out what style of music those shows are using. You got to find out the editors and the supervisors, and then you have to research, their websites and find their contact information and reach out to them and yada, 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 okay? You get 2 placements in a month. This is awesome, okay? The first placement, you're going to get $500. The second placement, you're going to make on the upfront licensing fee. The second placement will say, again, simple math, $1,500. So 2 placements, you made $2,000. That's awesome. Congratulations. When you work with a music library, now you're keeping 100% of that, keep in mind. When you're working with a music library, let's say they get 6 placements for you, okay? Let's say that first placement is, I may have to start doing some math in my head, but I'll forget it. Let's say the first placement is $250. Let's say the second placement they get is, $300. The fourth placement that they get is, let's see, what is that? That's $550. Let's say the next placement they get is, $450. So right now you're up to $1,000. Let's say they get you an $800 placement. Let's say they get you a $1,200 placement. So now we're at $2,000. And the last placement they get you is a commercial. And that commercial is $15,000. Now, they're the library. They're acting as your publisher. They make half of all your placements. Okay, so the first 5 placements, if I remember correctly, I think I added it up to around $2,000. They would take half. So you would get a check from them for $1,000, right? That they would keep $1,000. But then they got you, so theoretically, it's like, well, it makes more sense, to get these licenses because you keep 100% of them on your own. Not so much. Then you get that commercial, which is great. You're going to keep 7,500. They keep 7,500. Awesome. So really that kind of mutes this, but let's take that one off the table. Okay. You can see right now the benefit of working with a library company, provided they get you the big high dollar commercial, but you're forgetting about the back end. Okay. Let's take that one off the table. We have 5 placements, 5 key high dollar placements. And you kept $1,000 of the upfront fees versus the 2 placements where you kept $2,000. You're forgetting about the back end. You're going to have royalties coming on 3 more placements, which I guarantee you, I almost stake my life on it, unless they're just terrible placements, that those placements, the royalties that you would get on those would far outweigh the $1,000 that you would make more on your upfront licensing fee by retaining everything on your own. So
Very enlightening there. Yeah, that's a good point.
You have to think long term, and then you have to think foreign international royalties. So again, I understand the idea for musicians who are afraid to give up some of the upfront fees, but you have to look at it like that. And this path just destroys that one. I've gone down both roads. I can tell you that I am a huge fan of working with music library, and I'm a huge fan of having a great relationship with people at that music library, because that's what's going to allow you to make that six-figure income or the very high fives. That's going to allow you to have that consistently over and over and over and over. This other path, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be administering your catalog so much that you're going to stop building your catalog. And you can't forget that. Okay, it's a 4-step process. Continuously building your catalog is essential, right? Because you always want to have new stuff that you can add in. It doesn't have to be every day, obviously, but if every, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, you have a batch of new songs, that's what you need. You need to have the consistency over the long term.
That's really, really good, and just fantastic process that you have. Even though there's 4 steps, there's obviously a lot to it on each one of them. There's a lot to it. So, yeah.
Can you dog barking? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Can you just leave us with, a couple of book recommendations that you would just say, hey, if I had to pick the top 2 or 3 books, what are they?
Yeah. So there's a great book. I have to look it up quickly on my phone. Give me a second. It's a green cover. It's on Amazon. The last name is like Wiley. I think it might be Wiley. It's a publishing book. Everything you need to know about music publishing, but it's not that. Something Guide to Music Publishing by something Wiley. I wish I knew the name offhand, but it's a green book. Last name I'm about 99% sure is Wiley. Then the other 2 books that I always recommend would be Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. I just thought that was an incredible book. I read that years ago. I don't know how many versions of that book are out now. They're always updating it. And then there's a very difficult book, and we see this one a lot. I don't know too many people other than myself who's actually finished the entire book, but it's called This Business of Music. It's written by 2 different people. It's a pretty thick book, but it's heavy on the contracts. I'm a big fan of being able to read a contract. Now, I'm also a fan of being able to get someone like a lawyer or whoever to read your contract for you if you're unsure of it. But I'm a big fan of being able to read the basics of a music licensing contract, because music licensing contracts are not like the contracts that you're handed as an artist. I've seen artist contracts that are, just dozens of pages and whatnot. Most licensing contracts for a sync or a master license are 2 pages, with the 3rd page being for your signature. They're very simple because you're not handing over really any rights. You're giving someone the license, the rights to use that song for that specific placement, for this specific duration, for this amount of money. Licensing contracts are not difficult, but they are written in lawyer speak, and that's what that book was very good for. It was a tough read. I'm very glad I read it, but it's called This Business of Music. This Business of Music, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman, and I just forgot the name of it. Something Publishing by a guy named Wiley, and it's a green cover, and it's fantastic.
Okay, excellent recommendations. We'll put those books in the show notes so you can go and find them. And I've already been adding a couple to my library. I've got, music publishing or Guide to Music Publishing. Is that the one?
That might be it. Yeah, that might be it.
It's right here on my desk. Is this it?
That's it. Yeah. Oh, Wixon. Wixon. I said Wiley, right? Wixon.
Yeah, Wixon. Okay. The Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing. So that's one. I just added it to my library. It's sitting here on my desk. I'm going to start reading this myself. And everybody's listening. I'm a student just like you guys are. We're all students. There's always so much to learn. There's so much we don't know. So why not go to the experts who have already been doing this and know what they're talking about? So I'm a huge fan of reading. I read all the time. So excellent recommendations. And where can people just go to connect with you?
Well, you can download, I have a free book, actually I have on my piano here. It's called The 4-Step Plan Licensing Success. You can go download it for free. I created a website called Master Music Licensing, which has been awesome just because I've been sharing this with so many musicians, and I love seeing musicians take this. I love the licensing world because I'm passionate about it, because there's so much opportunity there, and I'm so tired of seeing musicians just struggle, and that's where I've done well, and that's the world that I know. And it's not a difficult path to follow as long as you know the process. And I love seeing people who are implementing this start making, in the last like 5 figures. I showed this to a friend last year who just in this last couple months has generated around $30,000 now. Since November, we're in January. So
that's fantastic. Absolutely.
It's just awesome. And I have many stories I can share, but that's the stuff I love, because now it's giving musicians some financial freedom, that where they can, not hustle so hard with the other stuff they were doing. Go, I can pull this into my business plan and utilize this avenue as another way to get my music out into the world. And I think as musicians, isn't the goal when we started, wasn't it to just write music that people would hear and play music that people would hear? It's a great outlet for that, and that's why I love it.
Exactly. And in this new music industry, there's just so many different avenues, and it's about thinking outside of the box, finding the path that resonates with you. Not everybody is a touring artist like myself. I'm not a touring artist, but for some people, they just live for that. That's the only thing they want to do. And for other people, they want to choose the licensing route. And I think it's important that whatever route you choose, that A, you learn from the best, and B, that you go all in. I'm not a big believer in dabbling. Don't dabble. I think if you're going to do it, jump in with 2 feet and just give it your all. And rather than a little bit of this, a little bit of that, doing a little bit of everything, I don't think it's going to get you a good result.
No. Well, so, I think the dabblers are the ones that a lot of those other companies that charge money and whatnot, they're the ones that they go after, and it's in the world of licensing, as long as you know the process, it's really not hard. I think as you're seeing yourself, you reached out to some people recently and had an immediate response, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was for like, a show that I'm a big fan of, that my fans are a big fan of. And by the way, here's a great exercise that I will just share my experience with. I don't have a lot of time to sit around and watch TV because I'm so busy with Sad Musician Academy, my own music career, and 5 kids and all that sort of thing. And I don't even know all the good shows out there. So I did an Instagram post, and I posted the same thing in my Facebook group for my fans and on my page. And I just said, hey guys, what show would my music make a great soundtrack for? And I got like hundreds of responses. And what was so cool about that was I just got to see like, a lot of repeat answers, like, Vikings. I just see like, 100 people saying the same thing. And then shows I didn't even know existed. And then, old movies. And I put all of this in an Excel sheet, in a database. Mm-hmm. So for later, because I didn't even know some of these shows existed. So if you want to know, like, I don't even know what show my music would be good with, ask your fans. They know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. That was really fun.
That's awesome. That's exciting too.
Yes, very exciting.
Yeah.
Man, this has been so enlightening. We have like a ton of amazing just information that you gave. So I want to thank you, and thank you on behalf of all of our listeners for just sharing so much valuable content and just opening their world and their eyes to the possibility of doing licensing, and that there's a whole world of opportunity out there.
I love it. There's over 500 TV shows currently in production. There's an abundance of opportunity, but I just love doing this stuff.
Well, thank you again so much. We'll definitely put your contact info and everything in the show notes so people can get in touch with you and get these books and start exploring this world of licensing. Thanks again.
Cool. Thanks, Leah.
thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I have some exciting news for you. If you have been wanting to know how you can crack the code of Spotify and increase your listeners and your monthly followers so that you can create a regular stream of income, this is going to be so exciting. Join the wait list and be the first to know when our new Spotify mini course is live. Go to savvymusicianacademy.com/Spotify. That's savvymusicianacademy.com/Spotify and sign up for the wait list, and we will email you as soon as that mini course is live. This is going to be so exciting. I'm very proud to present this to you. This is unlike any other teaching out there, and I promise it's going to be worth it. Thanks again for listening today, and we'll see you soon.